Hi, I'm Craig Pope from Pope & Co Mortgages. I'd like to talk about how you can leverage off your current home to buy a rental property. We've been helping a lot of people recently make the most of their increased equity in their house to buy a rental property. Now, you do need to be aware of how the Reserve Bank restrictions work when tapping into the equity in your current home. If you're buying an existing house as a rental property, the Reserve Bank says you need to have a 30% deposit. If that rental property is a new build, you need to have 20% deposit. If you have enough equity in your house, it could be that you don't even need to have a physical deposit to put into the purchase. Leveraging off your existing equity, that rental property purchase could be 100% financed. Now, that is assuming we don't borrow more than 80% against your existing house, nor more than 70% against an existing property that's going to be the rental. So here's an example of what the numbers might look like if you're going to buy a house as a rental property that's an existing house. Let's assume that your own house is worth $550,000 and you have a $260,000 mortgage. The most you can borrow against your owner-occupied property to create a 30% deposit in a rental is 80%. So 80% of 550 is 440,000. Then take away your existing mortgage of 260, means you have 180,000 of equity to recycle as a 30% deposit on the new rental property. 180,000 is 30% of a $600,000 purchase. Now, you calculate this by taking 180,000 and dividing it by 0.30, and that equals 600,000. So 180,000 is a 30% deposit of a $600,000 rental property purchase. So that means you could 100% finance a rental property up to $600,000 with lending to 80% of your owner-occupied value and 70% of the rental purchase. Now, these are the maximum guidelines set down by the Reserve Bank. Another example could be if you had no mortgage on your $550,000 house, you could borrow up to 80% of that value to pay cash outright for a rental property to $440,000. So $440,000 is 80% of 550. Assuming no mortgage on your house, then technically you could borrow $440,000 to pay cash outright for a rental property of that purchase price. Now, what I've explained is a common scenario of how to get into your first rental property. It does sound complex, but do feel free to call us and we can talk you through it based on your particular situation. Now, one thing that the scenario I've just talked about doesn't take into account is the bank's serviceability rules. What I've talked about is the equity and whether you've got enough equity to buy a rental property. Of course, there is some other complexity to it in terms of your income, potential rental income. So you do still need to meet lender and bank servicing guidelines to meet the criteria. Again, there's always different scenarios that can come into the mix. Like I mentioned at the start, new builds require a 20% deposit, so it's a little bit less onerous. Also, there are non-bank lenders who can potentially do 80% across your owner-occupied and the rental purchase. So there is some other options available that may come with slightly higher interest rates. So like anything, everybody's situation is different, but what I've explained today is just a straightforward solution that would be with a major bank and based on the equity you may have in your property. But feel free to call us anytime, 0800 000 517 to talk through your situation.